Tobago became an independent nation in 1962. Before that, the country was a colony of Britain. The islands of Trinidad and Tobago actually composed of Africans and Indians in Trinidad, evenly matched, and a more homogeneous black population in Tobago. In the early years of migration, which predated independence, most Trinidad and Tobago nationals went off to the UK, a smattering to the USA. But after independence, there were issues that led to a change. The foreign missions, foreign policies of these different countries were more helpful in some countries than others, which led to the USA being the more predominant choice for the people of Trinidad and Tobago, followed by the UK and Canada. In the case of Canada, it must be noted that in 1967, when Canada celebrated its centennial, it was making a call to the rest of the world to come and settle in Canada. A fair number of Trinidad and Tobago migrants decided after that call to make a move towards Canada. It was shortly after independence in 1962 that the Sylvan Bowles Scholarship Fund for university students was introduced. And that was in the same year of his passing. Sylvan Bowles, born in 1881, was a Tobago boy who went to New York to study at age 23. He became a dentist after a number of years, and his wealth accumulated in a way that he felt it important to give back to his homeland. The Bowles Scholarship Fund actually began in 1938, which was a time when there was no free secondary education. In that regard, the scholarship was tenable at Bishop's High School, where he gave 3 scholarships every year. So the Sylvan Bowles Scholarship from 1963 continues till today, and there is an annual award which is being expressed in these follow-up interviews with persons who have benefited from the Bowles Scholarship.
The only scholarship that I know from Tobago was the Tobago Benevolent Society Scholarship, where Tobagonians living in New York, if I remember correctly, would select someone from Tobago and sponsor them. If you didn't have the means, you were going to suffer a bit. And the Bowles coming in, and it gave us the vigor to come back and work and try to break into the national arena and get scholarships, which we did, eh? I got the impression that it expanded its wings, but I do not know at what time Bowles scholarships were expanded to a greater crowd, a greater set of opportunities for others. Eventually, the results would have had to go through UE. So you forwarded your CAPE results, your A-level results to UE, as far as I remember, and they assessed it. They assessed that result and decided who should be awarded the scholarship.
But by saying CAPE now, you're talking about a more modern time.
Yes.
Because the GC was the system before.
But I think the UE came into it. UE came into it because in trying to get information, you know, I got the feeling from the principal and vice principal that UE at some point took over that, and they are the ones who were in charge of identifying, because now I understand that there are 10 scholarships and 10 bursaries, and UE is the one that says who are the winners.
I did not know until my final year that I was a recipient of the Bowles Scholarship. It was that I did go to Mona. I chose Mona because of the library studies initially, and then I went into foreign languages. And one day a lecturer just walked up to me on campus and asked me if I knew that I was to receive this scholarship, and it was there pending for the last 2 years or something like that. That was my thing. I don't know the amount because my father, being in Jamaica, my father collected on my behalf. I never knew, and of course, patriarchally as it is, I never knew how much I earned from that scholarship. But it did make a difference, I know, because otherwise it would not have happened for me as able to pay back loans and that kind of thing. Yes, so it was a great gift. I came home in May of '94 and I was in Bishop's teaching right after that. Not knowing that there was a whole band of persons who would have received gifts like this. It's only as a teacher that I would have heard about the process for the Bowles Scholarship and that kind of a thing. And I have always since then remained looking, trying to find out information about it. The impact was tremendous enough because on the island there was only Bishop's High School doing French. That's the first part. And I eventually acceded to do foreign languages and do French, not knowing anything about anything, right? So I tell it by God. Miss Sosa would have been my teacher. She never told me about Bowles, but she was impactful enough. After she got what she got and came back to give to me, she taught, and then I went off to UWI. I did my degree in French and Spanish and library sciences. And from there, I made it my life dream to come back to Bishop's High School and do the same as Miss Sosa would have done for me. And luckily for me, the space was there because when I came, the French teacher had just died. So I walked straight in. I never did an interview or anything like that, and I was placed here. And since then, it's 28 years of me doing French. So they were good enough to have created a program where they documented all the names of the persons that they knew had gotten this scholarship. And so we came up, I think it was a Sunday afternoon at Bishop's here, and I remember Miss Sosa being the first recipient, having to speak about the award. And out of that, after that, we elected a cocktail and we were able to hobnob with each other and see, well, so many of us benefit from this man. None of us seem to know anything about the man, but a lot of talk because, of course, since that time, nothing has happened since for us to meet again. At a school, I know I have started meetings where we have planned to have a wall of Bowles Scholarship honoring him and honoring other people with the Bowles Scholarship. Well, we do have a house named for him, the Greenhouse. And I know the alumni at one time we created boards that documented his details. Those are in the library right now. I'm not sure, you can probably go and see those. Apart from that, I know too, because of sports and Bishop's High School is big in house. So at some point, this would have been in 2010 probably, the Bowles House persons, the management, did reach out to Cheryl Bowles of Shemer because they wanted money to sponsor March Pass or something. And out of that, that lady came aboard and started sponsoring prizes and having a link with us. Well, they call it the Bowles Hall, but we don't even meet there. It is officially the Bowles Hall, yes. I have personal thing there because my daughter did get a bursary. That's when I knew that bursaries existed from Bowles. I knew about the scholarships. And it is then as well that when I heard it, I started tracking back because a lot of our students obviously would get them and you would hear, yes, the bursaries for a 1 year, $10,000 payment versus a scholarship that was 3 years and that kind of thing. So yes, that would have,
what year did
she would have been in 5 years ago. Okay. 5 years ago. Yeah, but even at school here, we do have people who are Bowles scholars. We have, when I did the research yesterday after you spoke with me, 5 people came forward and said yes, they had 5 members of staff. They had also had the opportunity to have a Bowles scholar. And weirdly enough, there was one person who was offered it and did not take it. Yes, I found that interesting. I never knew people refused, but then he explained that the THA scholarship had come on at some point because that doesn't exist really right now. And that was like 3 times the amount. So that was his reason, because if you're on scholarship, you cannot take 2, so yeah. It has been mind-boggling that my mother is from Bethel. That's how I know about Bowles and the Bethel part. And she remembers the family name in that village. And Bethel being what it gives in Tobago, it has a connotation of being less. And she always celebrates this man to me, even before scholar and all of that, And for me, I would want more to be done to honor this gentleman and all his philanthropy. I have heard about him doing stuff in the US and having all this reach all over the world. And people like us don't seem to be networked enough. We don't know about each other, right? We don't talk about it either. Because even with the staff, some of them I never knew that they would have been scholars, right? So yes, we do need to do more to celebrate our own, show off.
In the 1970s, it was evident that diaspora entrepreneurship had emerged in TNT. With Professor Hollis Lynch, a university professor at Columbia University, having purchased a parcel of land with a building in the Glamorgan area, which subsequently became known as Richmond Great House, there was now a significant interest in diaspora enterprises in the Trinidad and Tobago space. Continuing into the 1980s, we had this situation with the Trinidad and Tobago Medical Relief Incorporated. That group out of California journeyed to Tobago to conduct medical missions, and their live wire was Mervyn O'Neill.
We started health missions in Tobago somewhere around the early to mid 1980s. We brought a combination of Tobago doctors along with American doctors, and we did health missions here in Tobago. Coming out of these were some interesting studies. Of course, we were accommodated by the THA. So we held meetings with the THA. They accommodated us by setting up transportation throughout the various villages. But one of the focus of our work was around the question of cancers in Tobago. We, and I would dare say Dr. Small, Dr. Warner, and Dr. Modest, we took back with us blood from people here on Tobago and did analyses on them in the United States. And we found that there was an incidence, a 26% incidence of prostate cancer among men in Tobago. Dr. Modest, she also found a high incidence of breast cancer among women in Tobago. Dr. Modest started a mammogram clinic in Bell Garden to address that issue. Dr. Small, Dr. Clarence Warner, I mean, not pumping myself up in any way, but I as head of the mission, they submitted their report to me and I sent it to the THA. We consciously became involved with the Trinidad and Tobago Medical Relief Committee under several headings. One, if we speak of brain drain, these are your intellectuals who have graduated abroad. The Trinidad and Tobago Medical Relief Committee is saying these people have made their lives abroad, but how can they send something back home? So other than coming physically with those missions, the Trinidad and Tobago Medical Relief Committee and similar other organizations was designed to be realistic. Well, these people are not coming back here to work on a daily basis, but how can we derive benefits from them? And it's not only medical missions coming to Tobago and coming to the island that we were involved in or consciously involved in. the Trinidad and Tobago Medical Relief Committee has been a party to situations where citizens of Trinidad and Tobago arriving in the United States and becoming ill, though they were not, because they are not citizens of Trinidad, of America, and they were on visitors visa, we were able to refer them to hospitals there using our status in the community as upstanding organization representing these people. By 2000, we had moved now to education, and we brought young people to Tobago to connect with young people here, in Tobago. I would dare say, yes, those young people that came with us, they went to bishops, and the bishops' people danced with them, and they danced with the people, and so forth. But it was really a matter of connection and connectivity. Let me say that even a Tobagonian, her name Sophie Abraham, she was the president of an international high school, and she did contribute to American children coming here to Tobago. And now the intention was to make that connection. It's an educational thing. You see my culture, I see your culture, young people of the same age, we connect, and so forth. I would dare say that there were some wonderful reports coming back to us when we went back to the United States from the parents of those children who came with us.
Structured biennial trips in the summer were advanced by Trinbago Progressive Association, formerly the Tobago Progressive Association. This particular organization, led by George Phillips, a medical doctor, raised funds in New York to acquire equipment which they donated to households and organizations. Stephen Isaac, its current president, reveals the origin and activities that reflects the footprint of Trinbago Progressive Association in Tobago.
The mission of Tobago Progressive at that time would have been a mission of giving back to Tobago. And from what I gathered, it started with a little meeting. The names of the individuals were mentioned at Hanson Place Church, downtown Brooklyn. And the discussion was, we out here, we're doing pretty good. Why don't we give something back to Tobago? And it was decided to get some barrels. That was an easy way to start. Put some stuff in some barrels, ship them to Tobago that could be distributed, and they just built on that. You must have something sustainable to be able to carry out that. That something is a project, and that project would require funds. So obviously you had to have activities, and I recommend that anytime you're doing you have something like that, you need to have a sustainable source of funding. Yes, people will contribute, but at the beginning they were using like concerts mainly, right? And we moved on from concerts, started having what we would call luncheons, awards luncheons. In addition to the award luncheon, we had gospel brunch. So those were the two main sources of funding, in addition to the contributions that were made by people. And these contributions were extremely significant. When you're talking about hospital beds, Hoyer lifts, wheelchairs, walkers, commodes, I mean, just name it, clothes, food stuff in abundance. But you had to have money to ship those things. Hence the reason I emphasize how important it was to have a source of funding, because yes, you will get the items, but then they got to ship. You got to have barrels, you got to have those commercial bins, you got to have crates to send this. So that was needed. And that was the source of funding that started back then. And since then, we've had 25 awards luncheon, which would have included at those luncheons individuals from Tobago over the years, from Mr. London as Secretary for Health, going by, and I could name probably 10, 15 of these individuals who have gone through as Chief Secretary, as Secretary for Health, the last being Agatha Carrington in 2018, that would have been keynote speakers at our luncheons. The last one that we had with Agatha Carrington, who was the keynote speaker, would have been upwards of 300 people. Okay. So we would have the hall, a massive hall. We would have people coming out, people donating. Some people wouldn't come, but they would purchase tickets and things like that. The Gospel Brunch was an annual thing, as I explained. I was explaining to them, the Gospel Brunch would be business places from Trinidad and from Tobago, based in New York, would provide the items for the Gospel Brunches. So we could consider those Gospel Brunches as being done with very little out of pocket. We were able to, because I got to know Dr. Daniel Beckles, who I think you're familiar with, who is double-boarded, who is among the top 10 cardiovascular surgeons in the globe. He would have had access, and working at SUNY downstate and having as an electrician, having the opportunity to go to every area, in the students' area, wherever, it means that everybody around would know me. So it was very easy to get nurses, it was easy to get doctors, it was easy to get people in any field. And then, of course, coming to Trinidad, there would be people from home who would want to volunteer. So this basically would have provided the thing. But then, we have to come in, we must have a source here to send the things in. And this is where people like Mr. Diamond Andrews and Vicky Dikoto and this Canaan Seventh-day Adventist Church would come in that particular area, because you can't come in to do this stuff if you don't have somebody significant here or people who would be able to receive the items, to utilize for themselves, and also to hold some for us that we can actually do, and to help us with lunch and whatever facilities we needed. In Trinidad, the South Caribbean Conference. In Tobago, it was the Tobago Mission of Seventh-day Adventists and the churches, Good News and Canaan Church and Mount St. George and these churches. Medical mission trip would look like 2 weeks, all right? 2 weeks, we would come in on a Sunday pretty much. Well, Sylvan Henry, the public relations officer, we would come in like the week before to do the groundwork, to have things laid out. But when we would come in on a Sunday, the first thing that would happen is that the Tobago House of Assembly would host a reception for us. That has always been the case. This would be held on the Sunday evening, and then on the Monday, we would use that Monday now to put out. So if we were doing 6, 7 health fairs, we would have everything put out for all the different villages and areas that we go in. I would get in touch with, Diamond and the other folks here. They would organize the Tobago Mission for Tobago, Vicky Dikoto, for Trinidad. Well, we started with Verna McPherson. She was actually the health secretary back then. We had cardiovascular, we had dental, we had diabetes, and we had glasses, options. We had just about any service. We had psychologists, psychiatrists. We had medical missionaries who would cover the 8 laws of health: nutrition, exercise, water, sunshine, temperance, air, rest, and trust in God. So we had all those aspects. So there's hardly anything that would be out there that was needed that we would not have provided at different times.
Distribution of medical supplies sent from the USA were in later years handled by ASI, an arm of the Adventist suite. Diamond Andrews, its principal figure in Tobago, explains.
Well, I would say like about for the past 15, 20 years, we had been working along with Trinbago, and they had been doing a really good job in bringing stuff to us. ASI I think is the biggest recipient of the items that they bring into the country. Who ASI is the Adventist Layperson Service and Industry, and that is the core of businessmen and professionals in the Seventh-day Adventist Church. When Trinbago came on board and they began to talk with us, they had been coming before we even got involved. They had been doing spot meetings, spot checks for people and things like that in Moriah and Charlottesville, all over Tobago. And so when they said, listen, we want to bring some stuff in Tobago so that somebody could be here to take care of the stuff, we say, okay, bring it to us. And so they send stuff to us 1 time, 2 times, We're talking about beds and pampers and walkers and wheelchairs and things like that. They bring it to us, and then we go on the road, find people, we put it up on our media, which is ASI Media, Tobago ASI Media, and then people will call us up. Can I have a wheelchair? How much it costs? How much I have to pay for rent? And you don't have to pay anything. All you need to do is to fill out our form. So we know where the wheelchair is, where the bed is, whichever the equipment. We know which light pole. We have the telephone numbers of the people. We have the names of the sick person and the name of the person who come to receive it. And so we have a record of all those. And we get along pretty all right with that. And we have been doing really well. Never charge anybody for anything. It's a free program. Anybody come and get what they want. And we know if the person die, God forbid, or if the person get better, you return the item to us.
TT Migrants had opened doors for local talent and skill to earn foreign currency. These included not just pan players, but pan tuners, pan arrangers, and producers of pan accessories. In this regard, Patrick Arnold played a significant role when he was able to open doors for Our Boy Steel Orchestra from Tobago to find gigs in Western USA, especially in San Francisco area. Arnold actually eventually led to having a steel pan side based in San Francisco, and where from that position they would have toured places in the USA and performed in places like the universities. Pan Night and Day was an album they produced up there, and it was one of the first such albums of steel pan to make it on the Billboard charts. In a similar way, other healthcare missions were attempted for Trinidad. And a significant player in some of these initiatives was Miss Patricia Lee Keith. A resident in New York at the time, she was important in mobilizing a number of medical missions and other activities that improved the well-being of TNT nationals.
I was in Trinidad on vacation, and Dr. Alexander, who is the pediatric cardiologist, she had asked if we will be able to host some of the children with heart problems. And I told her, I don't think so, but I will know. I will find out, because at that time we had an organization called the Friends of Trinidad and Tobago. Patrick Manning was very instrumental in forming that organization. So I went back to New York, and we were sitting with another woman and who is friends of Dr. Alexander. Lo and behold, I got a phone call that this baby is in New York at Montefiore Hospital. And the doctor will not perform surgery unless the mother or the father comes to New York. In the meantime, the baby was there with a nurse. So I said, oh my goodness, I do not know the difference between a Tylenol and an aspirin, and here it is, I'll have to take care of some sick baby. And Andre, I went to that hospital. I saw the baby. The baby at the time was 18 months old, but looked like a 7-month-old child. Malnutrition. So anyway, I went to the airport, I picked up the mother, and the surgery went on the next morning. And I decided I'm not going to work. I will stay at the hospital with the mother and the baby. So that was baby number 1. So I got my neighbors to do a whole lot of stuff for this baby. Buying the baby clothes, fixing the mother up, giving her a nice hairstyle, buying her some clothes. And by the time she got back to Trinidad, I had such a great relationship with BWI at that time. We were at the airport and she was upgraded to first class. So that baby went on to another baby, and I was very excited just taking care of these children, giving them a new lease on life. So God has taught me that there's no boundaries in sickness. Absolutely none. You can be rich, you can be poor, you can be middle class. There's no boundaries.
Another mission was led by Trinidadian Dr. Noreen Johnson, and her organization, Touch Tobago, made annual interventions in the realm of healthcare, as expressed in this interview with Dr. Maria Dillon Remy.
It is really a pleasure for me to be talking to you about this important contribution that Trinidad and Tobago members of the diaspora have contributed to Tobago's healthcare. I graduated only 45 years ago from medical school in 1997, and then 40 years ago as a pediatrician. I came to Tobago in 1997 as the hospital medical director. So I've been here now for 25 years, and during this time, I have been involved in several of the initiatives that have happened by Trinidad and Tobago diaspora who have come to Tobago to help with healthcare. And the one that I'm most familiar with is the one that started in 2001, actually 2002, by the Touch Tobago team. Now, Touch Tobago was pioneered by a Trinidad and Tobago obstetrician and gynecologist. She's from San Fernando, and it was interesting because we did our final year together in medical school. We met working with Professor Bartholomew at Port of Spain General Hospital. She had come from Howard University, and she was doing an elective here, and I was in my final year, and that is when we met for the first time. And then we were meeting again in 2001 when they came to set up the initiative. So I met her then for the first time, and her name is Dr. Noreen Johnson. Noreen got a team of doctors, nurses, nutritionists, lab technicians, people from different spheres within the healthcare field, and they provided services. Initially, they started in Charlottesville, but then they also contributed to other parts of the island. They went to Palo Tuve, they went to Delaford in the early days. They also provided services at the hospital. So their involvement, and they used to come twice a year. Their involvement was very, I would say very impactful, because after the initial, let's talk about what happened in the community in Charlottesville. So they ran clinics in Charlottesville when they came, and initially they were at the Charlottesville Health Center. And there was a time when the health center was not functioning. They worked at the community center. But a couple years later, they got people from the United States to donate, let's say it was a theater suite. What they did was to convert a 40-foot container, and they outfitted it as a theater. So that container was packed with all sorts of things and brought to Tobago on a barge. When they got to Scarborough, they had to take it up to Charlottesville, and then it was offloaded in Charlottesville and taken to the location where they had land donated by Mrs. Turpin, and that it's at the bottom of the hill on the right-hand side. When you come to the bottom of the hill before you turn right to go, that facility was donated by this group in the United States who wanted to support what was happening in Tobago. So after a while, they operated from that container. Well, not container, the surgical suite, which allowed them to do minor operations. And then with the Charlottesville people, they were able to put a waiting area and stuff like that, so that people, they had, everything was done thereafter from that facility. They had the surgical suite where they did minor surgery, and then they also had the areas where they actually saw patients and everything. Not only that, but Dr. Johnson was the one who would have initiated doing keyhole surgery, buttonhole surgery, laparoscopic surgery for gynecological problems at the hospital. So she would have been involved with the director, the medical director in OBGYN, Dr. Victor Wheeler, and they would have worked together to initiate keyhole surgery at the hospital for gynecology, and it was the first time that was being done. So it was a very, not just involved, but a very impactful intervention by that team. I also remember there was a time when she brought a pediatric cardiologist, and there was a Tobagonian nutritionist. She is from Mount St. George. I don't remember her name. She works actually in New York, and she used to come with the team every year. They did impactful work in Charlottesville. So I'm telling you, they came in 2001 to initiate. And let me say, because I think it's important, they came for their first mission trip in 2002 when they started in Charlottesville. And they carried out missions until, I would say, we are now 20 years after that. I would say probably for about 15 years. Dr. Bovell, who happened to be a classmate of mine at Bishop's High School, Adela Bovell, they have the Bovell Diabetes and Cancer Foundation, and they have done a lot of work in the community for diabetes and cancer screening and stuff like that. Actually, they're still operating. They are going now, this is their 14th year in Tobago. The people that I talk about, these people have come to Tobago. They have paid their own airfare. When they come here, they stay in hotels or in guest houses, and they pay for their stay also, for the most part. So they have been giving of their own, yes. Mm-hmm.
The medical mission to Tobago especially deepened with members of the TNT diaspora organizing surgical procedures within the island's sole hospital. In one instance, arthroscopic surgeries were performed with a team from Connecticut, USA. The organizer of one of those missions that performed surgery at the island's old hospital shares her experience.
It's there that I've reached out to the physicians there, the surgeons with whom I worked, having visited Tobago and realized the challenges that people were having there with respect to health, and encouraged them to join me on an expedition to do some medical work on the island. At that time, the surgical suite, the theater at the old hospital at Fort George, was not functional. In fact, they were doing emergency surgeries only downstairs at the triage area where we called casualty. That was in 2000. Okay, I started. That was in 2001, or even 2000, between 2000 and 2001. And that's where my first medical team, that's when my first medical team came to Tobago and to conduct medical missions. But prior to that, while I was here in the US with that team, I gathered a lot of supplies, medical supplies and equipment. But one thing I must say, before I was able to really get the attention of the Tobago side of things, because it was very difficult from the government standpoint to kind of respond to you as a person in the diaspora that you wanted to give back. I think in those days they did not have an affinity for what the diaspora could contribute. And therefore, I needed to reach out to persons on the ground. And two of the key persons were Dr. Remy and Dr. Victor Wheeler. There were two incidents where I was able to assist persons living in Tobago with medical care because they had to come to the US. But I think I'm jumping different things here. Let me go back to, because there's so much to say. But basically, the question you asked me about, when I started, which is about 2001, and bringing the first team to Tobago. But prior to that, really, I accumulated all these supplies and equipment to come down. That first team consists of an orthopedic surgeon, a neurosurgeon, radio technician, radiography technician, another surgical technologist, a dental technician, and myself was the first team. To be honest with you, I must tell you the stresses that it involved, because remember I told you that the operating room was not functional, but there were some surgeries already that Dr. Remy and Dr. Vila had lined up for this medical team. However, I arrived 1 week prior to the event because, to get things, to make sure everything was working right. And again, because of how the government worked, I had some serious challenges in clearing the items, the medical items that the team needed to work. So even on the day that team landed at Crown Point Airport, I still was not able to clear the supplies, and they were supposed to start surgery the following morning. They were supposed to see patients the following morning. So you could imagine the stresses that I had, having a team on the ground in Tobago and not being able, going through this bureaucracy with the government and the THA to get these supplies cleared so the physicians and the doctors and the medical practitioners could work. So at any rate, with the necessary prodding of Dr. Remy and Dr. Wheeler and myself, we were able to get the medical supplies cleared just in time for the surgical date of some of these patients, which was a day or two later. So everything was just teeth biting right down to the end. Anyhow, we were able to see hundreds of patients during that time with all different kinds of complaints. I remember the hospital there was just so full, people waiting and all of that to be seen because they heard that these medical practitioners were on the island, and a lot of people with orthopedic problems were able to be seen. In fact, I must say that Ms. Cynthia Alfred, who was Secretary for Health at the time, she had fractured her ankle a couple of days before the team arrived. And she was one of the first recipients of that team to do surgery on her ankle. So that was perfect timing for her. At any rate, the team went on to have a successful mission, and that on their return, they discussed at the University of Connecticut all their experiences, and that brought more interest from the entire University of Connecticut and the surgical team and medical practitioners there. Once you have the will and perseverance and the need to assist people, I mean, you just have to cut through a lot of the bureaucracy and get it done. So that's my contribution for there from a medical standpoint, medical surgical standpoint. And I remember also donating. They had problems with sterilization. And even though it was a used sterilizer at the time, I was able to get that shipped down to Tobago to get items sterilized. I was able to get, for colonoscopies, mostly a lot of endoscopy type equipment. Laparoscopies, Dr. Wheeler was able to use a lot of the equipment to do a lot of laparoscopy diagnostics, to attend to patients' issues even subsequent to the mission. So I think all in all, there was good benefit came out of these missions.
In the arena of sports, qualified TT-born coaches were assisting in summer camps in several sports to improve the skills level of school-age children in Trinidad and Tobago, especially in the area of lawn tennis. But there was one particular philanthropist who was identified with lawn tennis in Tobago. And this gentleman, Mr. Sean Powder, made a fitting contribution to the improvement of the game in Tobago as far back as the late 1990s. In the arena of sports, qualified TT-born coaches were assisting in summer camps in several sports to improve the skills level of school-age children in lawn tennis, football, and basketball, among others. Exceptional talent would be tracked for possible places in U.S. colleges. In particular, sports philanthropy also included the supply of sporting equipment to local clubs and schools, like Sean Powder's initiative for Tobago tennis.
Well, tennis in Tobago, at one time when I was young, I was working for Arthur Ashe and Nick Bollettieri in the tennis business in the U.S., between Florida and California. So with a base office in New Jersey. So I always grew up playing tennis, lawn tennis, and at that time the program in Tobago needed some support through the Crusoe Isle Tennis Club and Tobago House Assembly. So we initially started by providing rackets, balls, ball machine, tennis nets. Then we got involved with some support of the coaches, and eventually, as the players developed, at the school age, we had a lot of children playing lawn tennis, school age in Tobago, and we developed the quality of coaching. We were able to assist with scholarships for many players abroad and to help navigate that. So I think not only did we get people playing tennis, but we were able to help in terms of the development of the human capital of Tobago by getting people through to university opportunities abroad.
It started in '91 when we first met in '91, and Sean was at that time trying to make arrangement for us to access training at the Bollettieri Tennis International Center in Florida. But it never worked out. He was trying to do it through the Arthur Ashe. There was an Arthur Ashe Development Fund, and he was trying to access that. After that, he helped, I think it's around 95, somewhere around there, he helped 5 Tobagonians to access scholarships in the United States. And he continued his help towards Tobago by making a contribution of about 400 rackets, thousands of balls, basket nets to expand the primary school program. So in 1998, our primary school program peaked at about 1,800 children a week because of that contribution. Thereafter, we lost that kind of substantial support, and the program had dwindled. So we need something or somebody like Sean Powder to come back in and help us to continue this massive program that we had. Well, we dominated not only Trinidad and Tobago tennis. For instance, in 1993, we won, I think, 8 out of the 10 national titles, and that continued right up until 2005, where every national tournament Tobagonians would win like 6 out of the 10 titles. And every team that left during that time, 50% of the players would be from Tobago, if not sometimes, in some cases, all. It helped us in 2000, I think it's 2008, where 2 Tobagonians won silver medals in the HITIC tournament. And HITIC is classified as the highest level of tennis in this part of the world. So we had 2 silver medals, and all of that is because of the support we got from Sean over the years. And he still continues to support, because right now he has some nets and some balls waiting to be shipped to Tobago to help out our situation.
About the 3rd year of the millennium, this new millennium, with HIV/AIDS discrimination still prevalent the Tobago AIDS Society found new impetus when healthcare professionals originally from Tobago started a campaign that restored dignity to persons living with HIV in Tobago. This initiative was organized and executed by Friends of the Tobago AIDS Society. And in this regard, Ms. Valerie Solomon played a very crucial role.
Well, it really started in 1999. We actually came to Tobago in 2002. But this whole thing started with someone being infected with HIV. And at that time, the treatment was not good. And people were dying and there were no medications. So someone brought it to the attention of myself and my husband, Owen. And they literally were preparing for burial. And so we said, no, we can save lives and we would really like to help. And so that individual came to the US, got treated, and did excellent. But the turning point as far as Tobago is concerned, and I have to call her name, because this lady, she looked at this gentleman and she said, he has done so well, we cannot not look back. And that was the nexus of our initiative for Tobago. So Maureen Phillip, I must call her name, Maureen Phillip reached out to my husband and myself and said, let us do something for the people in Tobago. And Edwin and I said, of course. What we did was, for the first 3 years, we did fundraising. And we did those and sent the money to Tobago. Margaret Wright was the person who was very involved. So what we did, we sent her the money, we sent her medication. And we have done that we did that for 3 years. After that, we decided the same experience that I've had with those communities in the US with charitable giving. I thought myself and Clary Bacchus says, maybe we should try that in Tobago. We said, why not? Let's do it. And that is the beginning of our FOTUS initiative in Tobago. In Florida, other than Clary Bacchus, Maureen Phillips, Laurelyn Adebayo, we were the people who really began that initiative. Harvey McFarlane from New York, he came and joined us, and then he brought a whole group of people from New York, Aileen Quashie among them. I mean, it was really a lot of people from New York that came one year. And they fundraised in New York also, because we've been to New York for a fundraiser. So it really did cross the border. It crossed the state. That's how we began in 2002. And that, what I say, it was not an easy thing. I mean, it sounds great and successful now, but it wasn't, because there was a lot of pushback from the people, because they were saying this was not the time to come, and this was saying, why don't you go somewhere else? And people also thought that everybody who participated in the walk were HIV positive, so some people did not want to come, but we were able to break those barriers. We were able to do that. And that was such a tremendous experience, because it really skyrocketed that whole movement for Friends of Tobago AIDS Society.
As early as the 1980s, diaspora persons were known to be active in broadcast media in the USA. These people were on radio, sharing the live society experiences from Trinidad and the music with the populations where they lived in the USA. One such personality was Vaughn Martin. He was based in Washington, D.C., and every week he filed a program that was listened to by the diaspora, not only from Trinidad and Tobago, but throughout the Caribbean.
For over 40 years, Vaughn Ulrich Martin has been the stellar voice on radio in Washington, D.C., beaming every Saturday at WPFW 89.3. In his program, Caribbeana, a program packed with information about social, cultural, and political events and activities going throughout the Trinidad and Tobago and the rest of the Caribbean. Vaughn Martin, as he's popularly known, has been the diaspora bridge between Trinidad and Tobago and Washington, D.C. and its neighborhood communities. Awarded the Diaspora Public Service Award by the TNT Embassy in Washington in 2017, is another of the Caribbean finest exports to the broadcasting world. His knowledge of world affairs and first-hand familiarity with Caribbean and Latin America made him a special asset wherever he served.
Trinidad and Tobago mass was exported to the USA, UK, Canada, and other places. But alongside the TNT mass, there were other initiatives pursued by TNT personalities living abroad. In the area of entertainment and broadcasting, an effort by Gilman Figaro led to the introduction of the Sunshine Awards in 1988.
I can remember when I was leaving to come to the United States to study. My aunt came down from Moruga, 2 van loads of people, and she was coming to see her nephew leave for the States, going to the States to study. That tells you how many eyes were on Gil Figaro. I thought one of the best ways that I could give back something to the world, give back something to my country, Trinidad and Tobago, give back something to the Caribbean, was to engage in that project that, it's the Calypso for Africa project. That's the song Now Is the Time. I was very blessed and fortunate to assemble a team, even with Errol, who's been hosting the program with Nikki for the past 12, 15, 16 years, that had the same passion that Gil Figaro has. The same commitment of giving something back.
The first annual Sunshine Award. Sunshine Award given in 14 categories, including
the 1989 Sunshine Award for Best Upcoming Female Artist, the 1989 Sunshine Award for Best Supporting Artist,
1989 Sunshine Award for Best Political Commentary,
Sunshine Award for Best Producer,
for the Best Arranger, for the Best Female Vocalist,
the Best Male Vocalist, for Best Calypso,
and more.
Tonight, my dream has come true. The Hall of Fame that institute will be the genesis of a new era.
With appearances by Lady Venus, Bill McCreary, Bill Trotman, Lord Kitchener, the Mighty Swallow, the Mighty Bamba, the Mighty Bingo, Von Martin, Lord Pretender, and the best calypso and steel band music in the world.
Diaspora entrepreneurship took on a new impetus in the early 2000s, and more TNT nationals living abroad began investing in property development in Tobago and Trinidad. One of the key persons involved in this kind of investments in this latter period was the Concordia Estate Nature Park founder, Beverly George Jordan.
The Concordia Estate Nature Park is a 50-acre estate. It was owned by the British for the last 300 years. Of course, it did change hands when the island changed hands, but our family were able to, through its investment company, were able to purchase the remaining of the estate and open it to the public for the first time. The intention is a mission to preserve the culture and preserve the history of what the estate is. And yes, the estate was a slave plantation, doing agriculture in crops like indigo, sugarcane, coffee, cocoa. So it was a dark history, but our mission aims to take what was a negative situation and put a positive spin on it so we can engage Tobagonians with the history, with the culture, and our guests from abroad. Our investment is in adventure tourism. So we really into the whole wellness, the whole being. So impact-wise, when people want to relax, recharge, rejuvenate, they come to the Concordia Estate. So that's wellness. Whether it be a river spa, whether it be the herbs, we have all of the herbs in the Amazon forest, and we're in the process of documenting with international scholars what those herbs are. So whether it be the herbs, the teas, the mud, we offer wellness. So there's a direct linkage between wellness and real estate. The real estate is just the channel through which we're able to offer the services. So our services are rangeful. And then we do like ATV rides, wagon rides. So I think there's a good synergy, a good linkages between what we do, tourism and health, and agriculture.
Horace Wilson, in the early 2000s, was a writer, producer, and director. Ultimately, in 2009, Horace Wilson came back home and produced a movie on local soil, Happy Sad.
It was shot almost, I think, entirely in Tobago. I don't think we shot anything in Trinidad. I'm not sure. I think, yeah. Anyhow, the director, as I said, is a woman called Diana Winter, who had directed some episodes of Soul Food a couple of years ago and a couple of TV movies. So I approached her with a script, and she liked the script, and we decided to do it. We approached the Tobago House of Assembly for some funding, and they actually gave us some. I had a very good friend, Rodel Clark. He's now deceased. He had played Joshua Walker on Turn of the Tide, and we kept in touch all the time. And he was my producing partner, and we went ahead and did it. In addition to the director, we also brought from the US a director of photography, a guy called Johnny Simmons. Very, very good cinematographer. He actually won an Emmy for shooting something. He was nominated like 3 or 4 times for Emmys. And we brought an assistant director. We also brought an actor, Bill Cobbs, who's pretty well known. He was in The Bodyguard with Whitney Houston. He was in Night at the Museum. He was one of the guards. And, you know, he's pretty well known. And he came down and we did it. Everybody else was local, the entire cast and crew. I wrote a script called Pan, which revolves around this, a steel band competition. And I entered it in a competition called Page Awards, which is very well-known competition. There were like 8,000 or 9,000 entries, and it came third in that contest. It was optioned by a production company in Los Angeles, and they tried to get it funded. They're probably still trying to get it funded, but it hasn't happened as yet. And then I did another script called Lara's Legacy, which is a real horror film, kind of, you know, low budget type thing, which I entered in another contest called Scriptapalooza. That's another big contest that had, you know, maybe 9 or 10, I don't even know how many thousands of entries. And it reached as far as the final 10. But in that contest, I think the horror script, Lara's Legacy, probably might be successful. I think that's probably has, you know, because that's a genre. It has its own, you know, audience, and most of them, you know, do well. In fact,
I asked you to do one thing for me, one thing. Sign your name to help me get that football scholarship, and you would rather go partying.
Then fine, go and live with your father. You won't have no worries from me.
Father? What father? I don't want to go to Tobago with you, and I don't want to be a friend.
That's all right. That's the way you want to play it? That's all right.
What do you think she's seeing a old man like you?
I don't care what she sees. They're not seeing me. She makes me feel as if I'm a man. As if I'm alive.
You and who else?
So that's it. You're a jock. You like girls. I am just trying to get back my life in order and stay away from trouble.
Yeah, but football season's over now.
Is that the girls' track team?
How great our God is.
I'd like to join the class.
I'm not taking anyone before the end of the term.
Suppose I could outrun your fastest girl.
Even in hard times.
You want to get away from the life of poverty that's staring you in the face, don't you?
I can't do those 2 lifts or you're out of here. I want to study in America.
I hope you're not expecting me to pay for it.
I don't expect a damn thing.
It's undeniable that the TNT diaspora has made a sterling contribution over the last 60 years, beginning with Sylvan Bowles in the area of education and continuing in other fields as denoted in this documentary. Social, cultural, sporting, and entrepreneurial achievements have been associated with the diaspora. More work needs to be done to understand the fuller effect of diaspora moving from the brain drain to the brain gain. in terms of our national development.